It is now my pleasure to introduce our first conference session featuring Allison Osmond and Kristen See from Delta Airlines. Allison is the Executive Vice President and Chief Customer Experience Officer for Delta Airlines and oversees the end-to-end customer experience that includes innovation and customer experience, as well as the experience for the 60,000 team members in Delta's airport customer service, in-flight service, reservations, and customer care divisions who deliver those experiences. Allison began her career at Delta in May of 1985 as a flight attendant after graduating with a degree in journalism from the University of Georgia, UGA. There we go. She is currently Delta's executive sponsor for human trafficking and executive vice chair of the University of Georgia Board of Trustees. Allison also serves on the board of directors for Delta Community Credit Union and the board of trustees for the William R. and Sarah Babb Smith Foundation. Kristen See is Managing Director of Employee Communications at Delta, an alumni of the Terry College. Kristen leads a team of 25 communications professionals and oversees operational communications to nearly 100,000 airline employees. You got that? Now we are going to hear from these two incredible women. If you all will please come forward, and if you guys will give a round of applause to Allison Osmond and Kristen See.
Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be here. I'm Kristen See. I'm Managing Director of Employee Communications at Delta and a proud Terry College graduate from 2001. Go Dogs. Never too early for a Go Dogs, Lori. And I'm in my role at Delta, I lead operations communications for nearly 100,000 frontline employees across our business. And I have the pleasure of supporting Allison, our Executive Vice President and Chief Customer Experience Officer. Allison?
Yeah. Good morning. How's everybody? Good. It's a perfect day when you can come do UGA and Delta at the same day, and Coke on top of that. So I, graduated from UGA, was a Grady grad. I have 6 Bulldogs in the family, 1 Ole Miss Rebel, so tomorrow ought to be interesting. But I do have 4 Terry grads in the family, so it's great to be here. And, as a part of UGA, when I graduated from UGA, I heavily supported, some local alumni groups here. We bought Bulldog tickets, for the games, and then it was probably 6 years ago I got invited to UGA to hear what was going on campus, and had the opportunity to be a part of the board of trustees at UGA. And I have never been prouder to be a grad from UGA when I look at everything that's going on that campus, whether it's working with NASA and launching satellites, you name it, to mental health and what UGA is doing in that space. It's an amazing university to be a part of. And, whether naive or not, as I got the past couple of years, gotten to know more and more about UGA, I think I was real naive about students and the true needs over in Athens. I mean, it's 40,000 students, and we have students that are living in their cars, they're sleeping in their cars. You have students trying to get jobs who need to be suited up to go for that interview. So it's been so rewarding to be a part, and I know the Terry School, you all are doing so much over in Athens as well. So I just put in a plug for all of us, right, to keep giving back to the great alma mater that we're a part of. So again, thank you to Terry for putting this on, and thank you for all that you do for UGA as well. So.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a lot about leadership today, and there's probably no better place to start than at the beginning. Allison, can you tell us where you started at Delta?
Sure. Well, I wanted to be Lori. So I majored in broadcast news, and when I graduated, I grew up in a small town just south of Atlanta, McDonough, if there's any McDonoughans in the room. Oh, 1 or 2, yay for us. But that was a career where I really needed to be mobile, graduating, and I was not, to really get into the space. So I graduated, got a job as a radio announcer right out of school, and then stayed there for about a year and a half, and then I truly wanted to get on with a big company. And growing up here, it really was, for me, it was about Coke and Delta. And there was no other companies in the world existed but Coke and Delta. And it was really because of their values. Their company values align with mine, and I think that's so important when you're seeking a career and just starting out, to align yourself with companies that have your same values. So I chose Delta, and I said I'm going to go work in public relations at Delta, having that journalism background. I applied and I got turned down my first application, and at the time at Delta, we just promoted from within. This was 38 years ago. I feel old saying that, but it was 38 years ago, and at that time, you had to be promoted from within for one of the merit positions. And so, I got my rejection letter, and I said, okay, I'm going to fix Delta. I'm going to work at that company. I'm going to get in somehow. And so at the time, it was you can work the gates, you can be a pilot, you can be a flight attendant, you can be a res agent. And I said, okay, I'll go. I had flown a couple of times. I said, I'll go be a flight attendant. So applied, got into Delta, and it was the start of something amazing. It has been 38 years. I've been incredibly blessed, but people ask me all the time, if you had to do it all over again, where would you start? I'd start exactly there. Because when you think about Delta and our frontline team, that's the heartbeat of what we do. They are closest to the customer. So to be able to be in that 17.5-inch runway in the sky, in the aisle, in that airplane, and be right next to customers gave me just a true appreciation for what we do every day, and I think it has served me well as I've continued to grow at Delta. So,
38 years is pretty unique, very rare. Although I'll say we do have plenty of lifers at Delta. Yeah. What has kept you at Delta this whole career?
Yeah, it's been the people. By far, we have 100,000 employees. The people that we have at Delta fascinate me. Not only the careers they had before Delta, but what they do at Delta. It is all about the people. I still, to this day, every day I go to work, I learn something new. It might be about myself personally and what I need to do differently. It might be about an engine blade, on the A350. But I still learn something every day, and we get to serve humanity. And I have to pinch myself, 30,000 feet up in the air in a tin can. Sorry, not being disrespectful but you're 30,000 feet up with humanity and people from all around the world. They're all on a different journey. And so it's a fascinating place to be, but it's a place that is right there with humanity and our people. So.
Yeah, and you've had the opportunity to lead various groups at Delta in your time. Can you talk a little bit about the different groups that you've led and what you've learned from them?
Yeah. So I've been a part of our leading our in-flight team, which is our 28,000 flight attendants. Later in my career, so that was a very operational, you can imagine, day-to-day, getting on time, picking out the product on board the airplane, and then had the opportunity to go lead our reservations and customer care. And that was very unique because the analytics, for those of you who may run a call center, the analytics, the revenue management side of reservations, that's where we sell all of our tickets. So that was I went from ops to commercial, so learning that. And then customer care, certainly the voice of the customer, hearing from customers every single day about what's going on in the life of Delta. So a lot of different opportunities to where I am today, but I've certainly learned something every single step of the way. I've had to evolve my leadership along the way. I've had to get rid of bad habits. I'm a perfectionist. So, you can imagine at the airline, not everything goes perfect every single day, does it, Kristen?
No. Of course it does.
Yeah, every single day. But, picking your battles. I had to learn early on, coming in and wanting everything to be perfect at Delta isn't going to be perfect every day. It's not going to be perfect for me, our people, our customers, and, so just evolving every step of the way. But I think one thing that has not changed throughout for me as a leader is listening. No matter how much you need to change and grow as a leader, one thing never changes. It's about listening and listening to the people that you serve.
Allison, one thing that we emphasize heavily at Delta when we talk about leadership is servant leadership.
Yeah.
And so when I came to Delta 5.5 years ago, I knew what servant leadership was, but I wasn't sure, in this context, what it meant at Delta. And really what it means is putting the needs of your people and your customers before the needs of your organization. Mm-hmm. And our philosophy is really that if you're meeting your people's needs and your customers' needs, the rest of your goals will fall in line. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about what servant leadership means to you?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's about putting people first and showing up every day to serve those people. And I had two great role models in my life. My parents. My dad was mayor of McDonough for 40 years, and you can imagine in that 40 years we didn't have the internet when he started, but we had it when he left office. But I watched him every day. He had a job at Norfolk Southern, but he also was mayor of our town, and I watched him throughout his career as mayor around serving the community. And it didn't matter how small the issue was or how big the issue was, but how he listened, paid attention, and acted on what he heard. My mom was a school teacher, and I can remember, same amount of time, 40 years, but I can remember, every night preparing for the next day to go serve the children in her classroom. And so that really, they are a huge part of where I am today. So I think serving your people, showing up, extremely important. For us at Delta, what we do is hard. I hope it looks easy to you all that fly, but it's really hard. 140 tons lifts off that runway 4,000 times a day. We serve 500,000 people. So it takes a lot to get all of that together for all of that to happen. And so if we don't make sure that the people that do that 4,000 times a day, if we don't make sure they know that they matter to us, we're in trouble because they truly make it happen for us every day. And so I think also a part of that is making sure, number one, that they matter, but making sure that we also empower them to be servant leaders, because it is one of the top 4 values at Delta. And you can imagine 500,000 people a day, 200 million customers a year. There is no rule book to tell you what to do when for all the things that can happen, in our world. And they do amazing things. I just got there was a TikTok from a customer who was flying from Minneapolis to Billings, and she lived an hour and a half from Billings. So she was jumping on the plane in Minneapolis. She was settled in that seat, and it's a wonderful thing to finally get to that seat. She realized she didn't have her jacket. She didn't have her car keys were in her jacket. So you can imagine she's flying Minneapolis, Billings, having to drive, no car to drive, and it was late at night. It was the last flight out. She had left it in the airport. She mentioned it to one of our crew members. Our crew member, went to the cockpit. It was departure time, and at Delta we're about on time all the time. And the cockpit said, I don't know, let me see what I can do. So the next thing you know, flight attendant to cockpit, cockpit to ACS. ACS ran down the concourse to grab the jacket, comes back, maintenance goes through the cockpit window because we'd pulled the jetway back. Cockpit window, passes the black leather jacket through with the car keys and gives it to, our customer. But, that's a great example of serving others and servant leadership. And so we constantly, not only us as leaders pouring into the people that make it happen for us every day, but making sure our people know we want you to do the same for our customers every day.
Absolutely. Ed Bastian, our CEO, has said many times over the past few years that crisis reveals character. Can you tell us a little bit about what servant leadership has meant to you during challenging times?
I think it's the same thing. It's putting people first and making sure they know that they're the priority. I was in New York for 9/11 and had just flown up the night before to have flight attendant meetings at the airport at JFK the next morning at 9 o'clock. That started at 9 o'clock. And, of course, we all know what unfolded there that day, but it was, our first thought was we've got 1,000 planes on the ground all over the world. We have people, our people are all over the world. Our customers are all over the world. Our first thought was, how do we get in touch with our people who are everywhere? And we didn't have cell phones then. We had pagers. So our first thought was taking care of our people and getting them to a safe spot and then getting them home. And we communicated. I was in New York from Monday, finally got home on Saturday on a train and driving. But every single day, we were on a conference call talking to our people, how can I help you, calling their significant others, their family members, trying to get them back to safety. And I will never forget getting home on that Saturday night, and my boss called me and said, Monday morning, I want you on an airplane, Allison, to Boston. And as you all know, one of the terrorists had flown out of Boston. And I'll never forget being in the airport that Monday morning. I had 2 small kids. I was scared out of my mind. I trusted Delta with all my heart, but I was scared out of my mind to be flying. You could have heard a pin drop in the gatehouse, but it was the best advice that my leader, who was a servant leader, said, Allison, you got to get back up there. You've got to show the flight attendants, the pilots, everybody else that are working your flight that it's okay to be back up there. Delta's done what they needed to do. So, just learned so much there. Fast forward to COVID, it's the same thing all over again, putting our people first during COVID. We had maybe 5 people in an airport and 5 people on an airplane back during COVID. But our first thought was, how do we take care of our people? We blocked the middle seat on the airplane. Yes, it helped our customers want to fly, but it was really for our people. Fewer people on board the airplane, so that our people felt safe. We were the only airline short of Southwest who did not furlough our people. We didn't want to do that. We were losing money every single day, hundreds of millions of dollars every single day. But it was about putting our people first, not furloughing them. And the same thing coming back to communication was transparency, no different than 9/11 here. We continue to have conference calls and Zoom meetings, just full transparency. I don't know what tomorrow's going to be. We don't know what this crazy thing is called COVID. We're going to get through it, but here's what we know today. What do you need from, as our people, what do you need us to do, and how can we support you better, right? So that you will feel safe and comfortable. So lessons learned all the way, but I think anytime, at Delta for us, putting our people first is what matters most, and the rest will work out if we put our people first. So.
Absolutely. That was a time that our culture really showed through at Delta. It's very important that we carry our culture from generation to generation. And right now, our current workforce is the most diverse, really, of all time, spanning 5 generations. Can you talk a little bit about the responsibility of those who are more tenured and have more experience to carry that on for the next generations?
Yeah. We have grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren. It's amazing, the generations that we have. And, as I think about, coming out of COVID, if there's one thing, it doesn't keep me up at night, but it is something that Ed and all of us are focused on. A third of our workforce is brand new. So we hired 35,000 people during the course of the pandemic. And to us, our culture is special. It is what makes us different. So we work intently to make sure these 35,000 know Delta. For me, 38 years ago, how I learned what Delta was all about, I was working a flight with 5 other flight attendants who'd been here for 40 years, and I was brand new. So I learned and felt and saw from all around me. Today's very different, particularly for a flight attendant or a gate agent. You've got 2 brand new gate agents working a flight, or the crew is all 6-month flight attendants. They're learning from each other. So for us, we've really relied on, we all, Delta is here because of the generations before us. And there are a lot of stories that we have that we can certainly share with this generation to let them know who we are as a Delta team. We had the spirit of Delta. So we had 3 flight attendants back in the early 80s who Delta was going through a really, really tough time. And they called our treasurer at the time. Flight attendant picked up the phone and called our treasurer and said, I'm a flight attendant. I'm an Atlanta-based flight attendant. I want to buy an airplane for Delta. And he put the phone down and picked it back up. And you want to buy an airplane for Delta? Yes. So 3 flight attendants got together and went out to they sent teletype machines. Some of you in the room don't even know what a teletype machine is, but sending teletypes across the Delta system, calling, communicating, saying, as a group of Delta employees, we want to buy an airplane for a company that we love and are passionate about. So they bought an airplane for Delta. It sits in our museum today as a visible sign of the generations that have come before us and what they've done. We had a CEO who forfeited his salary one year for the Delta people and said, I'm going to start a care fund for the Delta people, Delta employees. So when they go through tough times, if they need to pull from this care fund, they can be there. Fast forward to earlier this year, the care fund, you can imagine, through COVID, through all the hurricanes, was depleted. So we put a rally out to all the Delta employees. They gave $30 million in that fund today to give back to others. So we continue to, with our new people, make sure they know the history and the people who've come before us, because those are great examples of who we are as a company, and we want to make sure that continues to exist.
We also have a term at Delta that we call the Delta difference. And really, the Delta difference is our people. Can you talk a little bit about the impact that our people have on our customers?
Yeah. Our founder, C.E. Woolman, said, we'll never have a monopoly. Everybody can buy the same Airbus 321. Everybody can buy the same airplane seat. They can buy the same, pillow and blanket to serve on board. But what they can't replicate is our people. So it goes back to servant leadership, pouring into our people. We like to, our brand beliefs are about being welcoming and caring and elevated. We think that defines the Delta people. I hope those of you who fly Delta, you all fly Delta, don't you? Yes. Of course you do. Thank you. I know Lori's getting on a plane right after this. But we are about, if everybody is marching to that same mission, nobody can beat us. And I go back to our people being empowered to serve the community without a rule book, because we want them, they're the ones standing in front of the customer, and we want them to make the right decision at that moment in time for that customer. And they do it like none other. Another example is, as I'm thinking about the Delta difference, I had a customer write me to say, thank you for saving my daughter's life. And that was the headline. And I kept reading, and I tried to hold back the tears, but this mother and daughter showed up at the airport. The daughter was on her way to rehab. But the daughter had purposely left her driver's license at home because she didn't want to go to rehab. This was the second time she'd been to rehab. One of our ticket agents saw the mother in distress, the two, The mother became very, very emotional with the daughter. So one of our ticket agents, you could tell this was, an argument going on. Our ticket agent came up and introduced herself and said, "How can I help you?" The mother explained the situation and said, "I've just got to get my daughter on board the airplane, but she has no government ID to get on. I've got to get her to treatment for help." This ticket agent, jumped into action, made it happen. But she hugged the daughter and she said, "You know what? Your mother loves you. Get on board this airplane. Get yourself better and healthy." And so sure enough, all of that happened. And the mother wrote back and, as she was writing me and said, "Delta saved my daughter's life, got her into rehab." So that is the difference that our people make. If we make sure that our people know, you know what? Every single thing you do matters. And it matters whether you're cleaning the airplane or whether you're in tech ops and the maintenance part, but every single person at Delta defines Delta, and it defines the brand. And so all of us together being welcoming and caring and elevated with everything that we do every day matters. So.
And Allison, you mentioned that what we do is really hard. There's so many things that have to come together behind the scenes to make a successful airline, and the impact that our people have on our customers is very, very real. We don't always get it right, although we try to make it look like we do. Can you talk about a time that you feel like you had failed in your experience?
Yes, I have a vivid one, and this was 4 months into my career as a flight attendant. And when you're a flight attendant for 6 months, you're on probation. That sounds a little antiquated, but we're making sure that the job is working for you as well as working for Delta, because it's a different life. So you don't want to do anything, you don't want to mess it up your first 6 months as a flight attendant. But I've been flying 4 months. I was working first class. There was a female customer seated at 4B. Never forget it. She was the rudest customer I had come in contact with in all of my 4 months. There was nothing I could say, no matter whether I was offering her a Coke, whatever, I was trying, and it was a fairly long flight. And so I was not getting through to her, so I went back to the galley. I did not want a customer complaint because I knew it would be over for me at that point, being on probation. I started counting back from 1,000. It was that bad, trying to diffuse, in my mind, what do I do for this customer? And so I listened to the voice of my instructors, who I'd just been a part of, lived with for 6 weeks around training, hospitality, flight attendant, and went back out and got armrest level with this customer. And what I learned from her at that moment was we were carrying her son below on the airplane. I will never forget that moment. It hit me at 4 months into my now 38-year career. Shame on me and shame on the Delta team. We have an incredible responsibility. We have an incredible, accountability to humanity. And it was a lesson learned at that moment that every single person that steps in one of our airports, that walks across the threshold of that airplane, is on a journey. This was the worst day of this mother's life. Shame on me or us if we didn't try to make it just a little bit easier for her for the worst day of her life. We've got people flying on Delta for an interview, families who saved up, for months and years to take that trip to Disney World. And so that has stuck with me throughout my career, and I think it certainly speaks to servant leadership too. It's about putting others first and serving others all the time, and that's what I love about Delta, is we can do that. We're carrying humanity, and we can make a difference for people and the journeys that they're on 200 million times in a year.
Allison, servant leadership also really goes hand in hand with mentorship. Can you talk about your experience as a mentor and also the mentors you've had in your experience?
Yeah. I have been very, very fortunate. I know early in my career, I thought, you're going to have one mentor or one or two, and they're going to stick with you throughout your career. And I learned early on, you will have many. And I have been so thankful for all of them. I have been, and they come, I think for all of us, they come in all shapes and sizes in different ways. I will never forget when I first took on a more senior level position at Delta, and Brian, we're working on our diversity at Delta too with female leaders. There are more today than there were. We're well on our way, but early in my career, sitting around our senior executive table, they were primarily all male. It was 11 male and myself. We were in a meeting, and it was a heated debate going on around the table, and this mentor came out of nowhere. This male mentor, who was our general counsel at the time, he was sitting 2 chairs down. He leaned back in his chair and looked at me, and he said, "Allison, lean in. You know what you're talking about, lean in." I leaned in. I sat on the edge of my seat and leaned in, but you just, look for mentors, all around you, because they're always out there. And I think for us, as females, really as males too, I think for me, mentoring is one way that I can pay it forward for the next generation. Hannah, who you met earlier, she was one of my mentees from University of Georgia. So when she was a senior at UGA, and for all of us UGA Bulldogs, they have a great mentoring program. It's very, very easy to be a part of. I participate in it, have since COVID, and we are on Zoom once a month. It doesn't take long, 30 minutes, but to pour into a student, to pour into that next generation, I just think it's an easy way for all of us to give back.
I know mentoring means a lot to you. What advice do you have to those who are also mentors or those who are considering becoming one?
Yeah. Again, I think do it because I know for every single one of my mentees, I learn as much from them as I hope that they learn from me. So easy way to do it, just get started, try it. I think for those that you are mentoring, we owe it to them to be as transparent as we can to help support them and grow them. Share your experiences. We all have had them. It takes courage in corporate America these days, and be vulnerable. Share those vulnerable moments that you've had with your mentor. Those would be a few things, I think.
And if you were going to go back to the very beginning of your career and give yourself some advice, what would you say?
Oh gosh, a lot. I think for me, one of the things that it's maybe more for you all, advice for you all, I would say raise your hand, and some of you are starting your career, you're just starting your career, and I don't know if this is me, but I think it's more of a female thing. A lot of times early in my career, there would be assignments that would come up or jobs that would come up, and I would look down the listing, and it was like, I have this, I have this, I have this. I don't have that. I don't have that skill. Men don't care. They're just, of course I can do that. I will apply. I was very different. Back to that perfectionist, I had to have everything right to raise my hand to say, go do that. Thankfully, I got a little bit smarter on that and got the courage to raise my hand to take on an assignment. And I would tell you I would not be here today, I don't think, where I am today if I hadn't raised my hand to say, you know what, I don't have all of that, but I can dang sure learn it. So it opened up 1,000 doors for me. I learned more than I ever could have learned on this 18-month assignment. It built my network. I grew overnight because it was a big stretch for me because I didn't have all the skills. So I think, raising your hand is so important, and it's important, I think, for us as female leaders as well to encourage those around us to do the same.
Yeah, any last thoughts before we open it up to hear from the audience?
I would love to hear from you all, but I just applaud all of you. Again, Bulldogs, a room full of women, and I can talk about Delta, and I'm at Coke, all those things. Just thank you for what you're doing in your industries, in your corporations, for continuing to be great role models for the next generation. So.
Well, this is one of our favorite parts of coming and speaking with all of you. So please don't be shy. Please raise your hand. I think we have some mic runners in the audience. All right.
I thank you so much for being here this morning and sharing what you have with us. This is kind of like a personal story for me, and I just kind of need to give you guys kudos in front of your peers. I am a person with disabilities, and I am an incomplete quadriplegic, which means that, you know, I'm not supposed to be walking, but I am gimpy. And certain days it could be a little bit more pronounced. I fell in love with Delta because Delta knows how to handle or manage people with disabilities without making us feel like social outcasts, like we're stupid, like our money doesn't spin green like everyone else's, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't know that going into the situation until I actually had to fly you for the first time, having flown some of the other ones who told me, oh, you need to let people know at the desk when you buy your ticket that you actually need a wheelchair, which I did not ask for a wheelchair, all that kind of stuff, like bringing attention to the situation. The way you guys train your staff to just, you know what I'm talking about. It's a special thing where they don't like single you out, they don't draw attention to you, but they know exactly what to do in the moment. Like they identify the moment and they take action on the moment and make the right decision in the moment. And at that point, I thought about it. I said, you know what? You get what you pay for, right? People complain about the prices of a Delta ticket, but you get what you pay for because you can't put a price tag on service like that. And I'm telling you, no matter where, you know, my flight takes me to into a foreign land and I'm still on Delta, I still get the same service that I get when I leave Atlanta. And it is amazing. It's amazing. And I'm sure you had a lot to do with that, Allison. So thank you so much for whatever playbook you wrote because no one has been able to replicate that.
Well, thank you so much. And, you know, that's another, for me, I mean, that's one more thing that I've learned, you know, along the way in my journey. And we do every single customer that comes, again, on board Delta is important to us, and we want them to feel comfortable and enjoy the experience no matter what. And we do train all of our team on customers with disability. And the unique thing for me, which in this new role that I'm in, it's been phenomenal, we have an advisory council of customers with disability, all kinds of disabilities. And there are 12 of them that guide us on how Delta can continue to get better all the time, every day, to serve our customers with disability. And they have pushed us as a Delta team. We meet with them on a monthly basis. They push us, but they're taking us forward. And so the outcome, truly, it's a great Delta team, but our customers are in the mix with us in making it better. So thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, being presenters today. I truly appreciate it. I'm Angel Wade. January 2023, I retired from the military Army after 22 years of active duty service full-time. Prior to retiring, thank you. Prior to retiring in 2017, I worked for an Army organization called Soldier for Life. Then Delta was trying to start up a program where it was suits, our boots to suits, in the sense of transitioning from the military into a civilian role with a corporate organization, specifically Delta. For some strange reason, the program didn't take off. It ceased. Nevertheless, now I'm wondering, since I'm a veteran, do you have any type programs, or are you thinking about starting some based upon the percentages of numbers of veterans who need jobs?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service, and for sure. And I'm gonna look at Kristen, make sure I'm right, or the Delta team in the room. I think we've got, how many veterans do we have?
I don't know the number. We have a full business resource group dedicated to veterans.
Yeah. I want to say 20,000 veterans. I mean, it's a lot, and very, very focused on hiring veterans. We don't have a formalized program, but we do, to Kristen's point, have a veterans business resource group who work with all of the veterans across the Delta team to support them. And so I'll take that back. Kurt, the leader's name is Kurt. I can take it back to Kurt to see if there's anything we can do to get something like that. Ironically, I was with a flight attendant who's a veteran in Minneapolis this week, and she was asking the same thing, just talking about, coming out of the military, trying to establish a home, a job, and all those things. She asked for a very similar program at Delta just to help people get started. And so we'll absolutely take that back. Thanks for bringing it up. And will you help me make sure I...
Absolutely. Yeah. If you'll reach out to me afterwards, I'm happy to connect you. Yeah. All right.
Hi, Kristen. Hi, Allison. It has been an absolute pleasure hearing from you both. Delta has excellent customer service, I'm sure we'll all know, so it's nice to put a face behind the leadership that makes that possible. My question is, how do you and your team approach a situation where you hear about a customer that maybe had not such a great customer experience?
Yes, in my role, unfortunately it does happen because we aren't perfect. And in my role, that's one of the things that it goes back to listening. As hard as it sounds, I appreciate the feedback coming in. As hard as some of the complaints that I read every day, they're hard to read, they're hard to hear, but they're only going to make us better. And, you don't write a company until you're really, really angry about it. And so, in the customer experience role that I have, I do get a lot of emails. I got a lot of emails on the SkyMiles program, so talk about that. We've got 19 minutes left, so I'll get on that. But, every single one of the feedback that comes in, the complaints that come in, we act on that. We have a whole team, number one, that focuses on service recovery with that customer. But it's also not just about getting that apology back to that customer. It's about sending it to the team that's responsible for what happened. And that only makes us better. We have customer feedback coming in all the time where we learn, we've either got a technology problem and we need to fix it, or we've got a process problem that we need to change and introduce a new process. So we welcome that feedback. And, I would also say that the other side of that, important that you all know this as well. If you're all flyers with Delta, I know you get a survey at the end of your flight. We do read those. We have a whole team that reads the feedback that you give us, whether it's positive or whether it's need for improvement. We read that every single day and night. I wake up, it's the first thing I look at is my customer dashboard. How did we do yesterday for our customers? And we measure 19 different steps of your travel journey. We call it your travel ribbon. From the time you book with us to the time you get to your destination, where are we winning and where are we losing? And then what do we need to do about it? So it goes back to that, that listening all over again.
Yeah, and there are full teams dedicated to that behind the scenes again. And I know many of those come directly to you, but many of those surveys, every one of them goes through that process of getting filtered up to the right person so that we can act on it. Yeah. Number 3.
Hi, Allison. I'm Jane Gandhi with the Coca-Cola Company. I'm curious, as a Chief Customer Experience Officer, have you figured out the best solution for customer satisfaction surveys, right? Because I feel like like you said, a lot of times you get customer satisfaction surveys back when customers are angry, not when they're delighted. So how do you make it more effective? And have you thought about other strategic solutions where you can reach out to customers in a more scalable fashion?
Yeah, we actually get, we have looked at that, and we actually get great feedback through the survey distribution that we have today. We have 27 different surveys under the survey. So depending upon, what is going on at the time, if we're in a major delay weather situation, the survey looks different because we want to know how we helped you during the survey. So we've found them to be very, very effective. We measure ourselves on a Net Promoter Score that is built off of the surveys that we give. And so we know on what we call a blue sky day, when everything is running perfect for our customers in the operation, our Net Promoter Score can be as high as 75 to 80% of our customers are raving about us. So what they're putting in that survey is they're scoring us really, really high. The flip side of that, we know when we have a service failure through that, we know what it does. We've got a negative Net Promoter Score through that. So they are very, very effective for us. We are getting ready to change the early part of next year, though, to your point, just how do we take it to the next level? Because we want, there can be survey fatigue for customers too. We're all wanting feedback from customers about our brands, and there can be survey fatigue. So we are moving with a new company coming up where it will be more of a way for us to listen in a little bit differently. So the survey is going to be shorter, look a little different. And we've already started doing it, for example, with Wi-Fi. And is your Wi-Fi better when you're flying Delta now? Yes? Good. And it's free now. Yay. But with that, for example, back to kind of these short bursts of listening in, when we introduced free Wi-Fi and fast streaming Wi-Fi, improved Wi-Fi, we wanted to know it. And so we're sending these brief intercepts as you're traveling to say, how did your Wi-Fi experience go? So we're trying some new things, but the survey's been really, really, effective for us, both with the great feedback and the not so great feedback. And it's also helping us as well get back to, it's all about getting back to the individuals that may have been a part of that when we do things wrong so that we can shore up and do better. So thank you.
Okay, I think we have one in the back here.
Hi. Me or her? Okay.
Back.
Hi. Thanks for the discussion. Very much so enjoying it. And Delta definitely has been known as one of the innovators in your industry. But I have to say, you kind of caught me off guard with this one. And I'm just curious, what is Tom Brady up to at Delta?
This is an inappropriate comment, but he's nice looking. But sorry to the men in the room, but we are excited to have him on board Delta, and it's really about, and I know it surprised the population, our customers and community, but brought him more in for really internal to Delta, not to be a spokesperson, for Delta, for our customers. And if you think about Tom Brady, 7-time Super Bowl winner, high performance. Delta we're a winner too, but we want to continue to get better. And when you listen to his story about how he got to where he is today, there are so many analogies between being a leader on the football field to being a leader in the airline space and what we do every day. It's amazing. And I've had the opportunity, he is coming in and speaking to our front line really to help us as leaders with Delta to help inspire and motivate our teams. He was like 196 on the draft pick. So he was not number one. So that this idea at Delta, we got to keep climbing, he had to keep climbing. He didn't play football until he was in the 9th grade, and he wasn't the best. And so he talks about, you know, to hear him as quarterback, all-star quarterback and a leader, talking about every single practice, how every single day he showed up for his team, he prepared himself. It didn't matter whether it was practice or a game, he mentally and physically prepared himself for that moment. The same analogy at Delta. Every single time we have to push that 140-ton airplane away from the gate, every single person, the mechanic, the ACS agent, the flight attendant, the cockpit crew, they all need to be prepared for each other. Because if they're not all prepared for each other, we can't push that plane back successfully for all of you. So, you know, all of those analogies. The other one that, you know, is so valuable for the Delta team right now is back to that multi-generational. We've got 80-year-olds and 21-year-olds. You know, the more seasoned employees at Delta are looking at the younger generation saying they don't know it, they need to sharpen up. You know, he talks about as a 41-year-old in the locker room with the 21-year-old in the locker room, you know what, as a leader, I've got to extend I can't sit back and say I'm Tom Brady, I'm the all-star quarterback. I've got to have that 21-year-old a part of the team and feeling like a part of the team to make us be successful as a football team. Same thing over here at Delta. You know, we've got so many generations. We need those tenured, seasoned employees, back to that sharing of the culture. We need them to extend themselves to the new generation at Delta to teach them all about Delta. It can't be just, I've got 38 years with Delta, you need to do better, and you've been in here 6 months. We've got to work together. So we're at the very beginning of the partnership, but it is amazing to hear the analogies that we have. And in the end, you know, his whole story is about showing up every day. Football's hard to go get beat up. Delta's hard business. But if we all show up every day prepared for that moment, that game, that one flight, that one customer, then, you know, nobody can beat us. So thank you for bringing that up.
Hey, Allison. Thanks again for coming today. My name is Terry Ray. I work for Veritiv Corporation. I was just curious about your time as a mentor and specifically as a mentee myself. What kind of advice can you give to people just starting out in our career and taking full advantage in someone who has so much knowledge and experience just as yourself?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, just starting out your career, important to align yourself with a company that you're aligned with their values. I would say make sure you're passionate about what you do every day. I love what I do every day. I've loved all 38 years. They haven't been perfect, but because I'm passionate about the brand and our people, it has kept me there. So follow your passion. I go back to, if you have whatever job you're in, be all in. You were given that job, be all in. You know, yes, you maybe have aspirations to take this job later on. I think some people start a job and they're already ready to take the next one on, and so they don't do this justice. My advice would be all in with what you have. Show people what you're all about, be responsible, be accountable for that. And then the last thing I would say is back to raise your hand. You know, any opportunity out there, you never know where that opportunity is going to lead you, whether it's a volunteer opportunity at your company or whether it's an assignment. I, volunteered to support, our anti-trafficking efforts at Delta, and my life has forever been enriched by the courageous women and survivors of that. And so raise your hand.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Yasmina Lapsi. I did want to first start off by saying thank you, Allison and Kristen, for coming and speaking to us today. Funny enough, I think, Allison, we kind of sort of met on Zoom. In my senior year, I believe you were talking to the Terry students, and yes. I don't know if you remember that, but
Zoom days. Well, and we still have them, right? But
It's nice to see you in person.
nice to see you.
So I did actually graduate from UGA in 2022, and just to give a little bit of context, I'm like a first-generation visibly Muslim student that had to kind of navigate the academic world, and I'm currently working on navigating the corporate world, but I'm making my connections from scratch. So how would you kind of suggest introducing yourself and finding the spaces and circles where you can even begin to raise your hand with people who have already made it? Or even kind of like accept a challenge, especially since sometimes these tables have traditionally not favored or been traditionally made to include us.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, I would make sure that whoever your leader is, let them know that you want, right? You want to get out, you want to network broader. I think that's so important to stay in touch with your leader. I think if there are business resource groups at your company, I would absolutely sign up to go be a part of a business resource group. I would also say, you know, as you are just navigating and looking around, you know, if there are people that you aspire to meet, be courageous and send them a note and say, would you mind spending 15 minutes with me over coffee, over Starbucks? So be courageous in a sense of reaching out to get to know people. And congrats on graduation.
Sorry, I was saying thank you. Would you kind of suggest doing that like over LinkedIn? Because I feel like once people graduate, they don't even check LinkedIn. Like, how would you even go about sending them a note? You can't just like yellow page their address or something.
I think LinkedIn is a great avenue to do that, absolutely. I think, you know, and I also think, you know, again, within the corporation that you're in, are you already working at a company, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, again, within the corporation that you're in, I think sending an email as well internally within your company too. So.
What a great opportunity here today.
Yeah.
Hello. Oh, thank you for your time today. My name is Melissa Ketty. I work in sales and marketing. And I know we don't watch the safety video on Delta flights, but one thing I've noticed throughout the past couple, sorry, we don't. But I have, actually, because I've noticed that over the past couple years, it's become more diverse. And you've had a lot of different representation. So could you talk about that journey of inclusion, and were there any obstacles along the way?
Yeah, you know, I thank you for the question. I think, you know, there is not a destination here for diversity and inclusion, right? We will always, it's a journey, and we're going to continue to get better and better. And I am really humbled and proud of Delta and what we've done. You know, earlier in my career, we've always focused on diversity and inclusion, but gotten just stronger and stronger and stronger, very similar to what Brian talked about earlier. Holding ourselves accountable to metrics to make sure, right, that holding ourselves accountable to that. So, you know, I think all of our leaders just spending time with our team to learn where are our gaps and where do we need to be better. So, we have a whole council at Delta of executive leaders that we focus on what programs do we need to do to make sure we're as diverse as we need to be, and have put those into place. And if you think about Delta, 100,000 employees, we're around the world. It is highly, highly diverse. And then you think about 200 million customers we serve. We've got to match our customer base, and we do, but we've got to make sure that that diversity within Delta continues to get stronger and stronger. So.
Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Crystal Ivy. I'm a 2014 MBA grad from Terry College of Business, so excited to be here in this room of awesome women. The question I have for you is customer service is very important to me, and when I think about Delta, I think about companies like Chick-fil-A. You guys do an amazing job at just showing true customer service. The question I have for you is when you think about challenges that happen for businesses. What has allowed you to keep that top priority? What are things that you do to ensure that even in those challenging moments that a company like Delta still maintains that level of great customer satisfaction?
Yeah, I would say we stay at it. You know, for those of you who've been longtime Delta customers, you know, we've had a really tough time coming out of COVID. Our operation, you know, we were #1 and on time, we still are. But we had a lot of constraints earlier this year with our pilots because we lost some of our pilots during COVID. They retired. You can imagine, you know, you can't just hire pilots and they can sit in any seat. They have to sit in the left seat or the right seat, and it has to be the right equipment that they're trained for. So we were creating multiple delays for our customers. And you know, with every single one of them, whether it's something like COVID or whether it's, you know, the operation, we come together as a Delta team and figure it out. And when you talk about reliability, when you look at our, you know, customer satisfaction, 50% of it is within Delta's control. So it's how we respond to you in addition to making sure you're safe and our planes are on time. That's what matters most to customers. So we sit together in that example, we sit together as a team and figure out what do we need to do differently to move ahead. And if there's one thing that I would say about the Delta culture is we have grit. And we're the grittiest people I know. If there's something wrong that is impacting our customer experience, our Delta people are going to take the hill. They're going to take the hill no matter how high that hill is. They're going to take it to figure out the problem, to solve it for our customers. So it is that teamwork. It's listening to our people, listening to our customers, and then coming together as a team, whose ever responsibility it is, to figure out what do we need to do to change it and win in the eyes of the customer. So.
Well, thank you, Allison. I think we are out of time. I think we are.
All right. Well, go Dogs. Thank you so much for everything. I appreciate it.